I just talked about a lot of things with Dan just now, and I feel like I learned a lot from him, and he learned a lot from me. The last thing we talked about was how the Harvard graduate that present the commencement in was stirring kind of discussion online, both in China and the U.S. Well, in the U.S., the most viral video was the Harvard when the Harvard graduate was being interviewed. She was talking about how humanity rises and falls as a whole, and there are two-person fighting on the background, and it rises and falls as a whole, and that's one, and that's so like crazy how everything's kind of synced together. But I think the Chinese internet is presenting the whole thing as more depressing. Like people are discussing her background and whether she's representative of Chinese students. And I think in general the environment's less friendly. And aside from that, me and Dan just talked about how maybe making videos of our own life, making a can make ourselves more conscious of our audience, so that we can live our life more consciously and more authentically. Like we should explore different settings, explore different things, to present to our content, present to our audiences, so that we can improve our life in the process. So I think, oh, that's such a great way to think about it. Like, I mean, for Chinese students, we're usually evaluate in terms of our writing, our essays, um, or just scores. Like even the process of learning is not that enjoyable because there's no audience. Everything is just grinding, and there's no teamwork or group sessions. So eventually, everyone's flattened into like just grade scores. So so it's kind of like very important thing that people need to find the way to communicate with each other and present themselves, like group sessions, clubs, and common interests, um, such as public speaking, debate, um, theater, music, piano. Those are really like excellent way of presenting yourself. However, in a very like a developing country, maybe people just care about score grades, so everyone's kind of flattened, and they lose their own style. So yeah, in general, I just feel like people need to find more ways to communicate each other and to present themselves in a more I don't know, just present themselves. Presenting yourself pressure you to find a style for yourself. Um, yeah, so it's not necessarily true that China is just more controlling. It's more surveillance. Just it's an overly simplistic view, but I would say like Chinese people are just so used to compressing the whole person into grades, um, so that they don't really care about anything other than just school. And yeah, like the quality of a societal structure really depends on how people organize. Like like after enlightenment, people are starting to organizing themselves according to their political affiliation, their interests, hobbies. And the more egalitarian form of social organization actually provide people um, more freedom to express themselves, present themselves, to find their own styles in the process. And I think that's really what changed in European society that actually pushed the Western world into position of leadership. So yeah, that's like yeah, connecting to my own personal experience. I've been like working so hard on school, and getting like triple majors in political economy, political economy, and history and computer science. I've been like coming from like Chinese background, and I've been like working on school, just school every day. I wasn't really developing an interest for clubs and networking until recently. I feel like I pressured to try to get a job, things like that. But in the process of trying to connect with Americans socially, I just feel like there are much more profound wisdom to learn. Um, yeah, so one of them is just what I talked about. A society needs a certain healthy mechanism for people to present themselves, trying to find peers and like-minded people within the society, and that has a very deep historical root from like a free political association, the rise of contractarian ideology. It all emphasizes on people's self-expression and their voluntary social organization. That's a very important historical break from not only the past of European history, but also a break from other civilizations' patterns. Like other civilization, like Eastern civilizations, they have never gone through such a transformation into social organization. For Japanese, they're organizing according to the Confucian ideal, and samurais are like organizing themselves uh, under the leadership of Bakumo. What's that? What's that word? Bakufu and daimyo, and so they never went through an intense social transformation that allowed people to organize in egalitarian terms. Yeah. Um, it's actually very interesting that before the realization of how the social organization evolved in the Western world, I was just thinking like, oh, the U.S. is more wealthy, so people are just more chill. But sometimes I feel like the logic's actually not that simple. The U.S. or the Western civilization went through an intense social transformation that enables certain kind of social mechanism that enable better cooperation or better communication of ideas that push the whole civilization to a position of leadership. So if you think about it in a reverse logic, then maybe it makes more sense. Yeah, so that's basically what I wanted to talk about. And as for before, I was thinking about more on the scientific and theoretical side of how Western civilization different from the society I came from. And I feel like in general, it's just like science, religion, the ideological thing, they're kind of deeply intertwined. And for other civilization, especially from East Asian perspective, the modernities just feels like a disruption, and people are trying to copy what Western world achieved by organic evolution, like how to evolve from medieval theology, Ptolemaic geocentrism to Copernicus heliocentrism, and then later to Newtonian physics, and then to quantum physics, and so on. And there are a plethora of development in terms of epistemology in modern science. So, but for other civilization, they're just try to copy the whole knowledge system without developing their own, or maybe dropping their own system. So there wasn't like a organic evolution of the whole ideological, spiritual, and scientific landscape in other civilizations. My personal experience is that in China, like the whole scientific schema was kind of copied into civil examination paradigm. So people are just kind of replicate science and the corresponding logic. using like an old style or like a traditional imperial examination system. So everyone's trying to imitate Western modernity, but you know, they don't really understand the path that led to Western civilization's modernity.